Hey everyone, Derrick here to answer your questions about Metroid Prime Federation Force. Yesterday on our Twitter account, I put out the call for your questions about the game, and I gathered what I felt would be the most relevant. I have about 4 pages worth, and there's a lot to get through, but basically the goal of this is to really show you guys what the game is all about, and exactly explain what you're in for when the game is released on Friday. So let's just go ahead and jump into these questions. And first up we have MC Zur, who asks, is it worth getting for full price? Any good story in there? It's dynamic or rather slow as a turtle game. So let's go ahead and start off with the first one, which is it worth getting for full price? I can't say that yet, not until I have the full review out. That's kind of the point of the review, to be honest. But I will say this, I am having fun. I think that's probably more than a lot of people expected. So yeah, any good story in here? There are elements that work, there are elements that are kind of interesting, but there's nothing that sort of pulls me in. It's sort of like, oh, that's cool, continuing on. It's not, it's not going to be a gripping story, at least not yet. And it does have its place within the Metroid canon. It takes place after Metroid Prime 3 and before Metroid 2. So it does have a place in the canon. This is a canon game, it's just a spin-off game. Kind of like Metroid Prime Hunters. And finally, is it dynamic or rather slow as a turtle game? It depends on the mission. Sometimes it feels like you're going at the perfect pace. Other times there are points where I wish I could go a lot faster. But I think the game is made for that sort of speed in mind. It does not feel slow. It feels very purposeful in how you're moving. And I think you make good headway as you go along. So I don't think it's a slow as turtle game. It can feel slow at times, but also the action can be really fast-paced and engaging. So I think it can be dynamic is the answer you're looking for. Next up, we have the MLG Kirby, or Salty Me 63. Do you think that the concept of the game fits that Metroid-y feel? Honestly, it kind of does. The thing is, Metroid is obviously well known for taking a big area, exploring it, unlocking items in order to explore more areas, and that's not this gameplay. What this game is small missions where you have to take on different tasks. And each task feels pretty different, or they'll take earlier tasks that you did and build upon them for later tasks, so you always feel like you're making progress. There are exploration opportunities, but they don't have the forefront. It doesn't feel like a normal Metroid game, and that's kind of the point. This is a spin-off. However, we do have the Federation, we do have elements from those games, we have space pirates, we have the doors, we have other things that do make it feel like it's part of the Metroid universe. And I do think it fits into the canon because of that. So there you go. Next up is Chief Irons, who says, despite the co-op focus, will the game be just as enjoyable playing solo? I think so. One of the key features of the game are mods, and what you can do is that you earn mods throughout the game. You find mods within the levels, and in multiplayer you split them up. In single player you take all of them for yourself, obviously, and there's no limit to how many mods you can have. They can break if you die, and so it's sort of this management system where you have to look at what the mission might be, take in what you think will be useful, and there's a lot of different combinations to make it work. One of the mods, though, when you're playing single player, doubles your attack strength and doubles your defense, so it makes it much more possible to play on your own. And for a while, the single player does feel like it's manageable on your own, but the game does get quite difficult as you go along, making it much harder to complete. And I haven't actually used the solo chip at all, because if you don't use it, you actually get a bonus at the end giving you more medals. And I'm not fully sure what the medals do other than a few things here and there, but I'm curious what they do, so I've been trying to not use it, and it provides a good challenge. This game can be very hard without it. Now, obviously, it's a little easier when you have multiple people, and it is kind of designed for that. But unlike Triforce Heroes, where it's a slog to get through the single player in that game, you can easily play this, but you have to be good because there are enemies all around you. There's multiple things you have to be handling at once. Things can go awry, so you have to be aware of that. But the game does change up certain missions in order to make it work better for you. And so I do think it works better as a solo game than many others, but of course it's still preferable to play multiplayer. But you can get through it in single player. Next up, we have the Owen5GS, who asks, what are the controls? Basically think Metroid Prime 1 on the GameCube. You move around with the control pad, B is jump, A is shoot, Y is using your special weapon, X cycles through your special weapons, L locks on and R brings up the free aiming mode. And basically, once you're holding R, you can use the tilt controls of the 3DS in order to precisely aim. And I think it works rather well. I've got comfortable with it really quickly. I can do everything I need to do and have no issues. The D-pad is used for stock phrases that you can communicate to your teammates. Now, it does have a different control scheme if you're using the new 3DS, and basically what that does is rather than the motion controls, you can use the nub in order to aim and have more precise aiming in that way if you want to have it control more like a standard shooter. And rather than using R to look around in that way, you can use it to fire instead. So you have multiple options on how you're firing, how you're jumping, and you have a little bit more options as far as that goes. But even if you don't have a new 3DS, I still think it controls fine. And going off of that, we have Jayhawk DX. How does the aiming feel? So the weird thing with me with aiming is that because I'm using a recording 3DS, I don't have the freedom of movement that I usually have. But basically, you lock on and you can focus on that enemy. It's very much like Metroid Prime 3, where you lock on and you have that free aiming with the Wii Remote. Except that here, it's either the C-Stick or the motion controls. And they do encourage that precise aiming a lot, and it actually works rather well. It took me a while to learn it and get it really down for how the controls work, but I still was having fun in really figuring out how to precisely aim while moving, while dodging, while keeping up the attack, while keeping an eye on everything else, and they feel pretty good. It really does, and I do think the aiming feels rather good. Next up, we have Rodrigo Barreras, who sort of goes off of what Owen was saying earlier. Do the C-Stick and ZL, ZR buttons on the new 3DS add anything to the gameplay? Basically, they just become alternate controls. C-Stick takes over for motion, ZL and ZR are alternate fire type things where you can cycle or whatever. It doesn't really change up how the game controls exactly other than the C-Stick. So, there you go. Next up is Dominic Gendron-L, or Doom2332, who says, how are the controls after a long period of time, 1 hour plus? I played the Blast Ball demo when my hands felt in pain after 15 minutes. Because the missions are so short, you can sort of take a rest from the more intensive battles that go on. But they do build up after a while. I have been playing some long sessions with Nintendon and Stephen Totillo of Kotaku in order to get a sense for the multiplayer and see how the online works and all that stuff. And we played for a good 3-4 hours, and my hands did cramp up by the end, but I don't think they were like agonizing, like, oh god, I have to put this down, my hands are so bad. No, it feels fine after, I've felt used to it. I'm using this small, normal 3DS. So I think it's even more comfortable if you're using the new 3DS. Though Steven has mentioned a few times that his thumb does get a little achy after a while because of using the C-Stick and, having it a hard nub rub into his thumb the entire time. So it will build up after a while, but I don't think it's a major thing. If you split up your sessions into like 2-hour sessions, maybe even just 1-hour sessions, you don't really have to worry about your hands cramping up. And even if you go longer, it's not going to be that bad. So next up we have Sonic the Hedgehog, or Sonic the True 22, and he wants to know, what is the background behind Federation Force? So essentially what's going on with the story for Federation Force, and it's actually pretty well laid out in that opening video that we posted. The Federation is dealing with the aftermath of Metroid Prime 3. Phazon is no more, Phase is no more, and they need to find an alternate way to deal with the Space Pirates, because that did deal a blow, but they need to find a way to continue to have the upper hand against them. So they initiate the Federation Force in order to deal with that, and they have these mechs, and the Federation Force is meant to deal with the space pirate threat and figuring out what exactly they're planning within this system of 3 planets. And, nothing amazing, nothing deep, but there are moments that do stand out. I mean, you're not getting any named characters outside of Samus, but you are learning more about the Federation, which we haven't really seen much beyond a few instances here and there throughout the series. So it is interesting from that kind of world building view. We are getting to learn more about the Federation as a whole. And yeah, it's just a little subsection, but you sort of see what they do. What do they do without Samus? Next up is Football Helmut, I think I'm pronouncing that right, who wants to know, how long is the main campaign and what kind of missions can we find in it? So the campaign is likely going to take you about 10 to 15 hours, depending on skill. I have not finished the game myself. I'm getting close, but it has been pretty lengthy, I'd say, on the whole, and there is some replay value if you care about medals. As far as missions, there is a brilliant variety of missions. They start out simple with just take out these guys. Then there's a stealth mission where you have to get out of the suit and run around and avoid space pirates, set off a thing, and then get back to your suit in order to fight them off. There's another mission in the first 12 that I can actually talk about where you're preventing a giant monster from hitting a probe that you've set up. You need to prevent them from actually reaching it, so it's a boss fight under a timer. There's that mission where you're shooting the balls into the holes, but that actually comes into play later where they sort of take that idea and expand upon it. And the thing I really want to emphasize here is that each mission feels distinct from each other. Yeah, you're still doing the same basic gameplay as far as your controls, but what you're doing within the game, what they're throwing at you, how they're throwing it at you is different each time. And I think that is a huge benefit of this game's part, and it keeps up the variety and keeps me invested, and I want to see what they're going to throw at me next. Next up is Rhino 74, or Rhino the Legend. Is there any exploration at all, like finding any upgrades or power-ups hidden in the landscape? So what you basically search for in the game is there's hidden areas, so there'll be like a lava section of the wall. If you shoot it with an ice sub-weapon, it'll freeze it and you can blast it open, and then you can explore within, and usually what you find are mods, and the mods of course power you up throughout the missions, and there's a ton of them, and they actually get better as you get to the later missions. That's where most of your exploration is going to come down to, is finding these mods, and they're not so heading out of the way, but the game also is true to its speedrunning roots, where yeah, you have these missions, but you also want to get through it as quickly as possible in order to get bonus points at the end to get more medals. So you have to sort of figure out a balance between exploration and trying to beat it under a certain amount of time. And that comes to the replay value. Play it once to find all the exploration elements, and then figure out the best way to get through it quickly in order to go through. So it does sort of fit the Metroid vibe in that way. It's not major exploration. You're not going to go all over creation looking for these things, because these are bite-sized missions. Next up we have Sky Sands 2008, who wants to know, how is the multiplayer? Do you get to play with random people or just the ones on your friends list? The multiplayer is actually really good. As I said, I've been playing online with Nintendon and Steven Totilo, and other than a few drops here and there on Steven's part, it's worked flawlessly. Don's, of course, in the Netherlands, Steven's in New York, I'm in Pennsylvania, and there's been very few connection issues. It's maybe stuttered here or there, but that's like maybe once in a mission, and we've played like through 7 or 8 missions. It does not come up that often. And you can play with random people, you can play with your friends list, you can play locally, but each player does need to have a copy of Federation Force if they're going to be playing the main game. Only Blast Ball provides for download play, and that's because of the mod system and because the game does ramp up. So it'd be very difficult for somebody using download play to keep up with players who have the game. So it's sort of a balancing act in that way. But the multiplayer, again, is great. The game is definitely built for it, makes the game easier, allows you to handle all the threats coming at you in all the various directions in many of the missions. Yeah, the online's been very solid. Next up is Yumon, who says, is there a way to talk to other players? If not, is the auto chat at least more than 3 or 5 words? No, there's no way to communicate by voice command in the game. There are different phrases you can assign to your 4 D-pad directions and try to work out that way. I have not played with those yet because I don't think they'd be that helpful. There's a lot of coordination goes into play, because when I play with Nintendon and Steven, we are on Skype and discussing, okay, you take this, okay, I'll load up on this, I'll do this sort of role and go from there. And I think you can sort of figure that out, but I also see it becoming in chaos. It's like, well, I want to use this weapon, and I want to do all of this, and people don't understand. You have to really look at what other players' loadout, which is possible. You can see what other people are using as far as their loadout, and sort of design yourself based around that. But it also feels like communication is very much key here, and I haven't tried it myself yet. I'm going to be trying that hopefully here soon to see how much of a difference it makes. But I have a feeling you're definitely going to want to be able to communicate unless you've all played the mission before. Then you know what to expect and everybody knows what kind of role they should be looking at or what kind of role the other person should do. If you're all going in blind with no communication, then it becomes a lot trickier. So that is a problem with the game in the multiplayer. But there's not really a lot of solutions for that on the 3DS, it seems. So that's the way it goes. Joe or Robot Faker wants to know, how does playing alone hold up to multiplayer? Does the game adjust itself depending on how many people are playing? So I already answered about how the single player actually is kind of fun, but you do need help after a while. I have played with only 2 people and you can definitely manage better, but it still gets tough. You have these drones that will join you and they'll help you out in some ways here or there, but they're not like a end-all be-all aid to you in order to get through these things. But the game does, to answer your second question, the game does adjust how many enemies they throw at you depending on the amount of people playing. There will be more as you have more players, and you won't. Once you have 3 players, you cannot use drones anymore to sort of fill out those slots. So it does scale to what you're at. Next up is Tuam Player, who asks, is there download play in Federation Force? Now I did already mention this, but we'll just clarify again. Blast Ball is the only thing you can play with download play in Federation Force. In the main game, each player needs to have their own copy because the game does scale its difficulty. It gets harder as you go on. You unlock more mods, you unlock more slots for your character that they can bring in more items. And because of that, the download play doesn't really have that option to unlock those things because, well, they don't have any data themselves. And because of that, it does not allow for download play. But you can at least test out the game with Blast Ball if that appeals to you at all. Next up is To The Max 124, who asks, is the game best played with 2, 3, or 4 players? Also, is there a single player option for people who don't have friends? So yes, there is a single player option, and it is viable. Best played, I think as long as you get at least 3 people, you're in good shape. 2 can manage it, but 3 is definitely where your comfort zone is. 2 can get very hectic in certain missions and can still overwhelm you with how much that needs to be handled. But with 3, you definitely get into a comfort zone, and I think 4, of course, is the ideal, but I have not been able to play with 4 players yet. But based on my experience with 3 players, I sort of have an idea of exactly how it'll work. So 4 players is the ideal. 3 will give you a bit more of it'll probably be a bit more of a challenge. 2 is definitely a challenge, which handling all that, but it is possible. You know, you can still enjoy yourself. And as far as best played, I'd shoot for 3 or 4, but it's not like if you don't have that amount of people, you can't have fun with the game at all. Next up is Aaron Darcy, or Aaron Games. From where you are in the game, are you enjoying it, and have you tried the Amiibo support yet? All I can say right now before the review comes out is I am having fun. And as far as the Amiibo support, the only one that supports the main campaign of the game, as far as I can tell, are Samus and Zero Suit Samus. Every other Amiibo unlocks the same skin, which doesn't really do anything. It's just it's just cosmetic. However, the Samus paint job will give you 10 missiles for each missile expansion that you bring with you. So rather than the standard 5, you now have 10, and if there's a lot available that you can bring with you, and one person focuses on it who has that paint job, they can go into the mission with like 100 missiles and they can just wreak havoc with it. So it actually does help a lot in the game. Zero Suit Samus's paint job is not quite as useful, I feel, because it focuses on the slow beam, and while the slow beam can be helpful, it's not as immediately satisfactory as the missiles. The slow beam can definitely help out in situations, and it's nice to have more available to you, but it's little bit more situational in that way, or definitely encouraging more co-op in handling enemies. So just something to keep in mind. Next up is Thomas Livingstone, or Mr. Quazet, or Coswet, I think that is, who wants to know, how bad are the graphics? Okay, so the graphics are incredibly simple. There are some elements that do sort of pop out, some nice designs here and there, but on the whole, the 3DS can obviously do better. But I don't think it's all bad. I think, at least for me, I got to the point where I didn't care about them. They didn't matter to me at all. I knew what was going on. Everything is clear visually. I don't get mixed up between the space pirates and my allies. There's never any confusion in that way. They are serviceable. But obviously they don't stand out too much, especially when you're looking at other gameplay. The game does look better when you're playing on the 3DS itself, as is usually the case. Next up, we have Howard the Duck, or Vinyl One Solution, who says, how much screen time does Samus Aran actually have in this Metroid game? In the first 12 chapters, she is mentioned quite a lot. She does have a few appearances here and there. You get to see at least the top part of her model, but she's not shown up as herself in a mission in the game yet. So that's all I can say for those first 12 chapters. But Samus is in there, and you do hear about how she's helping you out. Next up is Bernier Brian, who wants to know, is the multiplayer region locked? Nope. As obvious from the fact that I'm playing with Nintendo in the Netherlands, you can play with anybody around the world who has the game. Lewis Spooky Communism wants to know, does Ridley or Kraid or a different member of their respective species appear as either friend or foe? As far as what I've seen so far, there's been no sign of Kraid or Ridley, and it's just been space pirates. But that could change, but I have no idea as far as what I've seen so far and what I can talk about. Zachatastic117 wants to know, is the game shorter or longer than Metroid Prime 1, around 15 hours? I think this game, depending on how good you are, how well you work with your teammates, what else you do, is pretty meaty, and I think it could easily take you between 10 to 15 hours to complete the whole thing. Now, obviously I haven't beaten it myself, and it does have this weird quirk with the timer where, for whatever reason, it counts the game time whenever you have your system in sleep mode. And so I'm a little confused exactly how long I've been playing, but it's definitely felt like I've put in at least 7-8 hours so far, and I still have quite a few missions to go. So I am guessing 10 to 15 hours to get through it. Now, obviously, once you're better, you can get through these missions a lot quicker, but that's sort of the case with all Metroid games. It sort of fits in that way. But yeah, I think on the first playthrough, about 10 to 15 hours. Alright, next up we have Program Ninja, who says, does this game feel like a Metroid game, and what is your favorite mission? It feels like a Metroid spin-off. It obviously is not meant to be like a traditional Metroid game, but as a spin-off, it does feel like I'm in the universe of Metroid. So in that way, yes. What is my favorite mission? There's a lot to choose from, and a lot of my favorites actually come in later in the game beyond the points where I can talk about. But even early on, there are some really fun ones. Like the stealth mission where you get out of your suit and have to go through and platform and then run back to your suit and fight off the space pirates. That's very unique. The bosses are interesting. Each one has a different feel, and it's hard for me to pick off the top of my head as far as the first 12, but there are some later ones that I really enjoy. Ian Windrum wants to know, are the loading times good? To be honest, I have not noticed them. There are wait times for the other players, of course, as it builds into it, but as far as getting into the mission, it's pretty quick. You can skip most scenes and just get right to the meat of the things, and I didn't have to wait around at all. It's all a matter of whether your teammates are waiting on something or working on something. That's where most of your waiting is going to come into play. Jacob the Derp wants to know, does the game come with Blast Ball? It does. It's built in, and actually, since I had the demo, I had the option of transferring my save file from the demo into the main game itself, so everything I unlocked in the demo is now unlocked in the game as well. So, yep, comes with Blast Ball. KBot273 actually wants to go beyond that and says, what are the differences between Blast Ball in the demo and as part of Federation Force officially? Nothing. It is the exact same. There is the exact same options. There are exact same gameplay. Everything is exactly the same. News War Drip or Kirby of the Stars wants to know, are there more maps in Blast Ball, or is it just one map you can play on? It's just the one map. I have not seen any other options for more maps, and that's the one you're on. Next up is Queen or Riki de Haripon. They want to know, I'm super excited about this game. How many missions are there, and if you can't say exactly how many hours would you say? I will say that there are more missions than you would probably expect, and enough that you can get to that 10 to 15 hour mark that I mentioned before. So I think there's enough to hold you over, I'll put it that way. It's meatier than I expected, I'll say that much. Carlos Diaz wants to know, are there a lot of different mission types instead of just beat this enemy or go to this location? Yes, yes, yes. There are different mission types all over the place. No two missions have been the same. I've encountered one that was similar to another or felt kind of boring, but that mission then was used as a way to sort of like, okay, here's the normal type of this mission. This next mission takes that concept and expands it to 11. And here you have to go through all of this stuff now, and along with, here's all this stuff you had to do before, along with all this new stuff that you have to implement into it. It's really fun game design. Next up is Jeroen, or Dark Nova 3529, who asks, does Psylux make an appearance? I have seen no sign of Psylux up to this point. Matthew Hunt, or Alpha Charizard, says, is there any hint at a future Metroid game? Again, like Psylux, not that I've seen up to this point, but it could happen, but I have honestly no clue. Marcel Rodriguez, or Mockdroid, wants to know how much exploration and lore is in the game. Do we get files to read a la Prime, or is it 100% co-op shooting? There is a bit of exploration, as I said before, mostly searching for the mods, but there's also these terminals that you can find in most missions that'll give you a little bit of background on what's going on. Now, it's usually only a paragraph or two, nothing too major, because this is still multiplayer and you don't want to hold up people by reading all the time. But you do get some flavor text on the area, some elements in the game, some things that you can find, and it does sort of build up the sense that these are worlds. You are learning about them. Nothing major, but enough that you can get a sense of what this is all about. Next up is Toasty Gamer, or Toasty Tyrone, who says, will the gameplay ever get repetitive? How does the level design compare to Metroid Prime? The gameplay has not gotten repetitive for me yet. I have enjoyed what I've played so far, and again, the mission variety does help that happen. Now, it could get repetitive once you beat the game and you want to go after all the medals. That could get very repetitive, but as of right now, it has not reached that point for me. How does the level design compare to Metroid Prime? They are two completely different things. Metroid Prime is very intricate in how it's designed, where you go, all that stuff. Federation Force is focused on the multiplayer, so the design is, you can have cramped hallways, you can have wide open places, there are big arenas, there are different places that you can go, there's different architecture that you can experience, there's platforming, there's all that kind of stuff that you would expect to find. It's just in bite-sized chunks and changes up each time. So that's the best I can say about how it compares. Next up is Nick, or Purple's Nick, who says, how does it fare against the other Metroid Prime games? So here's the thing, I don't think you should be comparing this game to the Metroid Prime 1, 2, or 3. It feels like the game that this should be compared to is Metroid Prime Hunters. Now, I've never played Metroid Prime Hunters, so I can't exactly compare the two because I just was not interested in playing a first-person shooter where I had to hold it and use the stylus and all that, so I just did not catch my interest at all. But based on everything I heard, Hunters isn't really a Metroid game itself either, as far as how it's traditionally used. It's much more of an arena shooter, at least as far as my knowledge concerns. I might be wrong about that, and I apologize if I am, but I think Hunters should be your basis of comparison here. Hugo Alejandro Luna, or Hauk1212, wants to know, does it have good online? As I said before, yes. We've had a few drops on Steven's part, but again, that was only twice in the several missions that we've gone through, quite a bit of missions we've gone through. If a person does drop, what happens is you just continue on without them. The mission, you just lose that person, you continue on. The scale shifts to match how many players you have now, and the other person will actually play on their own. They'll be switched to single player in that case. The other thing that happens though is if you quit a mission or you get disconnected completely, you do have the chance of losing some of your mods, because mods can break. So that's sort of their discouragement for dropping out of a mission or trying to troll by quitting and leaving people in a bind. But otherwise, the online has been pretty flawless. Vikram Paul, or the Vicky P, wants to know, are there any actual characters, or is everyone a faceless Marine? Mostly faceless Marines. The only character you really meet, as far as what I've experienced so far, is your commander, who I don't think has a name, and Samus, and that's about it. But they do use that to about as best as they can. But yeah, there's not really any characters in here. There's not really a character-based game, to be honest. This is more of an event-based story. Cartoonami, or Alex Irez Q, wants to know, how weak is the stereo 3D effect? I do not play stereo 3D. I don't play the 3D that often. It's just not my thing. That's more of Ash's type of thing. But I did play a mission with this 3D on, and the effect is nice. You got that border that sort of gives you a little bit of a sense of depth. You can sort of see how it goes on. The 3D works very well from what I can see, but I'm not exactly an expert when it comes to the 3D effects of things, but I think it works well. Next up is Austin Final Boss, or Gaming Lord 15, who wants to know, how is the enemy variety? At first it can seem a little samey, but as you do go through the game, more enemy types are introduced, they're mix and matched with what you can face, and they do bring in a lot of different enemies, and some of them require some real thought in how to take them down. And I have not been wanting for enemy variety at all, really. As soon as you might feel a little bored with this one type, here's another one that they've introduced, and it's still happening where I'm finding new enemies, so I think the enemy variety is pretty good. Spooky Julio wants to know, how would you describe the music? And it seems to fit in where it's a lot of times it's sort of subdued or more atmospheric and whatnot, and then during the action scenes it does pump up and get you to it. I don't think any of it is especially memorable, but I do think it just it sets the mood as well as it could. You know, it's just, the music hasn't really stuck with me in any real way, but it's also not bad. It's not like grating to me or anything like that. Tony Coffee, or The Goomba, wants to know, are any bosses from previous games in it? Also, does Samus feature more than just a cameo appearance? So far, I have not encountered any bosses from previous games. They've all been wholly original and quite fun. As far as Samus, again, as far as right now, what I've experienced, it's just been cameos. Just sort of mentioning her, saying this is what she's been up to, that kind of thing. Next up is Matt WBT, who wants to know, is there some forced attempt to fit it into the canon of the other Metroid games? It doesn't feel forced. As I said, it takes place after Metroid Prime 3. It talks about the Federation dealing with the aftermath of the loss of Phazon and goes from there. It doesn't really feel like it's wrenching it into the canon. It feels like it naturally slots into place in this case. Ben Lamoro, or Aramgard, wants to know, how big of a role does Samus play, and does it feel fitting to her character? So actually, it is mostly cameo, but you'll hear about, okay, Samus did this, she took care of this, she scouted this out, and she's learned this bit, and we're going to support her in this way. So it does feel like she's sort of doing her own thing while you're doing your thing. It does kind of feel like there's a Metroid game going on in the background as far as a traditional one, but I also think it's done in such a way that it's not exactly that way, because you hear him talking about her and she'll make an appearance, but it also feels like she's not on her own. She's definitely in a support role and working together with the Federation in this case. I think it's fitting, but it's also different for her character in a way. Next up is Joseph Renna, who asks, how well does Federation Force expand the Metroid universe? It gives you your first real look at the Federation, how they work, what they're up to, and whatnot, and I think is the main thing. It shows a little bit better of how their relation to Samus is and what their goals are in regards to different things. And I can't really say anything conclusively yet because, of course, I have not beaten the game, but it might explain an element from a game that comes down later in the chronology, which, if that is the case, it's brilliant. If not, well, I read a little bit too into it and that's sort of whatever, but it caught me intrigued. But yeah, I don't know if it expands it hugely, but you do get a better look at the Federation, which, hey, if they ever go beyond Fusion, that'd be great to know what exactly she's up against. Mikado999 wants to know, how does it compare to Triforce Heroes in single player, multiplayer, replay value, etc.? So single player, it wipes the floor of Triforce Heroes in single player. Multiplayer, they're also very different in how you work together, but because there's less of a need, it's a more natural, like, rather than you need this person to get through this point, it's each person takes a role and you're working together to get through whatever coming across. In my case, I often take a healer role because I got a mod that allows me to heal myself when I heal somebody else. So often I'll load up on the healing items, somebody says they're in trouble, I'm already a little low in health, and I can heal them in order to heal myself as well, which works out well. So you sort of take your roles in that way, and it's sort of like a more natural developing co-op. And I think it sort of, in that way, it's different from Triforce Heroes, and depending on which way you prefer, whether it's more forced co-op or a more natural, let's help each other type thing, you can decide on that. Replay value, it all comes down to there's a bonus objective on each mission as well as time. So if you really get into the game and want to get 3 medals on each and every mission, you'll definitely want to replay them in order to both beat the time limit as well as beat the bonus objective and get those 3 medals. So it might not appeal to everyone to redo all that stuff and try to get all the medals for each mission, but it is there for people who really want to go all out and get as much value out of this game as possible. Next up is Raymond Benito, who wants to know, would you recommend it to someone who has little experience with Metroid? Yes, because it doesn't really play like Metroid. This is, again, a spin-off title, so there's not really anything to really know about the series beforehand. You might, they'll talk about a few things here and there that fans will understand or get or know what to do, but it's not exactly necessary. So you could easily just get this game, get right into it, and have no issues. And finally, we have Uncle Silver Gaming, who wants to know, disregarding all the drama associated with it, do you think it's worth $40? Well, I can't say yet. All I can say is I'm having fun. I do have things to say about it and things to go on, and you have to wait for my full review, which is coming 9 p.m. Pacific time on Thursday, and I'll have my full thoughts then, everything I have to say about this game, and whether or not I would recommend it and think it's worth the full $40. You have to wait and see. So that's pretty much all the questions I got so far. A lot of people wondering just how bad it is and all that, but again, you have to wait for my review in that case. But yeah, that's all you guys' questions, so thank you once again for joining me for this Q&A session, and of course stay tuned to GameXplain for more on Metroid, including our upcoming Metroid Prime Federation Force review, and other things gaming as well. Alright guys, bye.